All right. Welcome, guys, to another Sunday live hangout. I absolutely love that when I get here, people are already in the comments, chit-chatting, talking, hanging out. Pepi is ours. El Tree in the mud. Well said, Josue. That is probably the best news that has come out this week for the national team, in my opinion, in all of American soccer, was Pepi committing to the U.S., not only because I think he's a talented kid with a high upside and a bright future, but also because of what it means in the ongoing battle for dual national recruitment, specifically, ongoing Mexican-American dual nationals, right? Okay, how's everybody doing? Bryant, Dan, D-Mac, Max, Zach, Graf, all of you guys, thanks for coming to hang out on Sunday. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Pepi a little bit and his decision. We're going to talk about Tyler Adams. This is actually a question I got on Patreon from Michael Baker. He wanted me to talk about Tyler Adams' role in a back three, and if he has one, and if so, what is it? So we're going to talk a lot about that. And we're also going to talk about a divisive topic, Sebastian Le Jet. It's been a good, solid week of debate about him, and I thought we could look at some data about Sebastian Le Jet and try and take opinions out of it and just look at data, which is what we're going to do today. But we're going to do that later. How is everybody doing? Jake Anderson says, what's up, Pete? Let's go. We got Pepi, though we lost Weah. Yeah, we're going to talk about Weah, guys. That's sad to see that we may not have Weah for this round of World Cup qualifying. We're also going to talk about who should replace him. So lots of fun, lots to discuss. Feel free to hit me up with those questions, guys, with things you want to talk about, and we will certainly do that. Owen. Mario says, let's start with Tim Weah, because I think this is something that's on everybody's mind, right? Will Weah get replaced, or is the I think you mean the list definitive? I'm pretty sure he can be replaced. I can't say that with 100% certainty. I imagine, though, that you should be able, because you submit a provisional roster about a week ago, so they should be able to replace players from that provisional list. The question for all of us, guys, is who replaces him? So let me start off by saying this. We don't know for sure that Weah is out. He wasn't involved in Lille's game day. So at all, not even on the bench. And then the reports came out from, there were some remarks from, I think, the coach that he had a thigh injury, that they need a scan, but he probably will be out for a few weeks. Now, that is not 100% sure yet, so maybe we are premature in reacting to this. But even if it is a very small, slight injury, I don't think that Greg will risk bringing him in with even a slight knock. We're talking about a full week of games, 3 games in 1 week in tough environments. If there's even a slight injury, Greg may not risk him. And if he chooses not to risk him, I support that, because his long-term health is more important than, having him here for these games. Also, we have people who can cover for Weah, right? So we shouldn't risk Weah if there is an injury, even if it is a slight one. Miracle Onyek Wilu. Hey, Pete, my G, Arnold, Franklin, how are you guys doing? But let's assume, guys, that Weah is injured, that he's not available. Which direction do we go with this? There are several options. One is you try to get a like-for-like winger replacement, okay? And there are several options there. One is Cade Cowell, right, who plays for, San Jose. I still think he goes – I don't think he's ready yet for the national team, but to come and be involved with this camp, I would have no problem with that, okay? So he's an option. Julian Green and Luca De La Torre can both play winger. They have played winger in the past, particularly a half-space winger. So I think either of them could be options. They could also play in midfield. Some people have brought on Some people have suggested Jonathan Lewis. I hope we don't get Jonathan Lewis. There is nothing that Jonathan Lewis contributes to this national team, as we have all seen many, many times. Al Hollywood says, hey, Pete, what an El Trafico last night. As far as Weah goes, I am not too concerned. He hasn't impressed me in what time he has had with us. I'm not concerned, Al, because I think we have options, who can not replace him, but we have other options in the squad. We have depth. He's impressed me because he's very direct with his running on the wing, and he's technical. While he hasn't been super effective in terms of production, goals, and assists, I still think he's a crucial part of this national team. So I understand not being worried about him, but I disagree a little that he hasn't, been impressive in his time with us. I still think he brings a lot to the table, especially when you talk about stretching back lines. Weah is one of those wingers who isn't going to come inside to combine as much as he is going to be making those hard runs, or what Greg Berhalter calls verticality, to try and stretch the back lines and get in, on those through balls. So, yeah, I'm disappointed not to have him, Al, but I think we can replace him. Another option, guys, would be Kevin Paredes. I think that Kevin is certainly somebody who we can bring in now. He's been really impressive for DC this season. Obviously, I don't think he's ready to start for us or even get many significant minutes, but I have no problem with him coming into a roster like this and being an option, being a depth piece. Bring him into camp, have him train with the guys, get Greg Berhalter and the staff to have a good look at him. So those are really our options. Cade Cowell, Kevin Paredes, Luca De La Torre, Julian Green. I suppose Jonathan Lewis is an option in some people's mind. He's not in my mind. But nobody would really surprise me. If Berhalter brought Lewis, that would not surprise me. Emmanuel Sabi is an option that some people have suggested. Guys, I haven't seen so much of Emmanuel Sabi, so it's hard for me. Some people ask me, do you rate him? I don't want to talk about a guy who I haven't seen enough of. I've seen highlights, but highlights are often misleading. So I don't, want to say, yeah, he's good or he's not good. I have to watch him more before, I rate him. Hoppy is another option that people have brought up. Good one. Hoppy, let me put it this way. If Berhalter brought him in, I wouldn't hate it, but I would understand not bringing him in. He just played 16 minutes this last weekend after recovering from a stomach bug and then coming back to full training again. So I don't think he's ready necessarily for a, CONCACAF scrap, but I would have no problem if Greg decides that he is. It's sort of one of those like on the verge for me. I would be fine if he's there. I would understand if he's not there. Nico Giacchini is another option. I could see Giacchini being called in. Bit of a similar situation though, where he doesn't have the fitness levels. He hasn't really been playing. Khan gave him some time off after the Gold Cup. He finally came last weekend. He was on the bench, and came on as a sub in the second half. But again, the question is, will he be fully fit for a CONCACAF scrap, right? Which is what this is going to be. Elkin Villalobos, maybe Jackson Ewell. Any Jackson Ewell or Jonathan Lewis would just be a straight up troll. I think Greg would be trolling the fan base. Thank you, Al. Okay, Longmorn16 says this camp needs more central than wings. Yes, I agree with you, but Longmorn, the thing is that both Reyna and Aronson can play centrally. So if you think about that, and then you also have James Sands who can play as a 6. So if you think about it that way, I would probably rather bring in a wide player, because if we don't bring in a wide player, now we only have 3 wide players. That would be Reyna, Pulisic, and Aronson, right? Oh, down we have De La Fuente as well. Reyna, Pulisic, Aronson, De La Fuente. So yeah, I guess, it sucks losing Weah, guys, but I think we have options. And for the vast majority of the options that could be brought in, I would be fine with any of them. The only 2 I would not be fine with are Ewell or Lewis. All right. Where are we? Let's talk a little bit about Ricardo Pepi, guys. It was very emotional when he, talked about why he chose to represent the U.S. And I put a little bit about it on Twitter because his comments are a very interesting insight into, a Mexican-American dual national and the decision that they have to make. They're forced to make a decision. It's one of those things where you're forced to choose between 2 countries that you love and identify with, and he said this, I think I retweeted it and put it on Twitter. He said, "Hello, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has reached out to me with amazing messages over the All-Star Week. It was an incredible experience to meet and play with and against not just teammates, but also some of my idols growing up. I grew up in a unique part of the USA. Living in El Paso and having my family in Ciudad Juarez meant every week I would cross the border to visit friends and family." So imagine growing up like that, where you spend almost half your time in Mexico, half your time in the United States. I have grown up always immersed in my Mexican heritage. I love everything about my culture, my people, my food, and I am very proud to be Mexican American. At the same time, I was born and raised in the USA. This country has given me and my family a home and endless possibilities to achieve my dreams. It has supported me, it has lifted me up, and it has shown me that when you work hard, you will be rewarded. I'm very proud to be called in to help the USMNT qualify for the 2022 World Cup. This means the world to me. I will give my everything to you all. Thank you, and I can't wait to see you in Nashville. Like, for me, that is just beautiful, you know, because it articulates so well the struggle of a kid like that, right? Who grew up, you know, between two cultures and has fondness and love for both, and expressed that fondness for his Mexican heritage and his Mexican culture, but also expressed that the US gave him so much, and he feels that. He feels that the US gave him and his family a home, opportunities, friends, you know, soccer training, coaching, a soccer environment, and that's beautiful, right? So I just love that statement, and I think it articulates so well the struggle of a Mexican-American player when they have to make that choice, and I'm proud that he chose the United States. But I also think that this has a larger impact on, you know, the future recruitment of dual nationals, because for a while there, it looked like the scale was tipping towards Mexico, right? We'd lost Gonzalez before, although that was some time back. You know, we lost David Ochoa, and then there was rumors about, you know, Araujo. Araujo is still not confirmed, by the way. You know, and like I said, we can and will lose some. That's just going to be part of the process. But we can't be losing all of them, right? And we didn't. We got a very important one, Ricardo Pepi. And I think if Ricardo Pepi continues to improve and becomes a regular player for the national team, for a lot of young Mexican-American kids, seeing a guy like that scoring goals for the U.S. men's national team will make them very proud and will help them to identify with the country they were born in or raised in or that they live in, you know? And so I think that will be huge for not just getting more, you know, fans to watch the U.S., but also, you know, recruiting in the future, right? All right. Isaiah Cap, do you think that Mexico will struggle without the Europe players that they didn't call up, like Herrera and Lozano? I don't know. It's hard to say with Mexico, right? Because they've been struggling for some time now, right? In the Gold Cup, they struggled. In Nations League, they struggled. In some friendlies before that, they struggled. You know, Mexico's problems are directly related to, like, I feel like I've said this many times, you know, their best players are getting older. They're aging out and becoming, you know, they're on the decline. And the young players that they're developing, the vast majority of them are not on the same level of, you know, they're the players who carried this team for the last 10 years. Jonathan Dos Santos, Carlos Vela, you know, Chicharito, Héctor Herrera, Andrés Guardado, you know, Héctor Moreno, you know, Nestor Araujo, Chaca Rodriguez, Guillermo Ochoa, all these guys. They're not at the same level. And so Mexico's level is going to drop. I still think they're a huge force. They still have Tecatito. They still have Chucky Lozano, Diego Lainez, Raul Jimenez, you know, Edson Alvarez. They still have some great players, but not as many as they used to have. And so I don't think they're going to be at the same level that they've been, which is the absolutely dominant kings of CONCACAF for the last 5 to 7 years. But I still think they will be a threat. I'm curious to see how they line up here, because they didn't bring Chucky, and they didn't bring Diego Lainez, and they didn't bring Héctor Herrera. So I'm curious to see how a lot of that's going to be on young players, right? Uriel Antuna is going to have to play on that wing probably. Rodolfo Pizarro, not really a young player. But, you know, Charlie Rodriguez, Luis Romo, Sebastian Cordova, we'll see how they do. This is going to be a big test for them. I don't think they're going to be top of the Ocho, but I don't know if they're going to struggle that much. A lot depends on Raul Jimenez and how he does, right? Frank Alvarez. I've seen other YouTubers say Roldan, Le Jet, and Ream are essential to the team. Please tell them why they are not better than Richards, Hoppy, Green. Okay, Frank, yes, I think I agree with you that Richards, Hoppy, and Green are all better than those three. But to play devil's advocate, Richards is in a situation right now where he may be getting a loan, right? And you know, there's uncertainty there. So if that is the reason he wasn't called up, then I understand it, right? I understand that reasoning. If the reason was that Greg Berhalter doesn't rate him, which I don't think was the reason, by the way, I think Berhalter does rate him. I just think his club situation was an issue. Then yes, I don't know if I agree with it as much. I would still like to have Richards in camp at this point, but I understand it. Okay, if he doesn't get that loan, well, that's a whole different story. As far as Reem, I've said many times I don't think Reem should be on the team anymore. You could have left Richards out, and you don't need to bring Reem. Le Jet, we're going to talk about a little bit later, so I'm not going to address that right now. Roldan, I've talked about many times. It's, good, hardworking, nice guys, not USMNT quality when you have the full team available, right? Hoppy, though, to address your issue about Hoppy is still not fully fit, right? He is 16 minutes in after getting back to training. So, again, it's like I understand the decision not to bring Hoppy. Now, a fully fit Hoppy who's playing on a regular basis, absolutely, no question. Miles ahead of Christian Roldan, right? To be fair, I think even a half-fit Hoppy is better than Christian Roldan. But again, I understand why, he's not there. And also there may be transfer things going on with Hoppy in the background too. We don't know. As far as what the other YouTubers say, that's okay. They can have their own opinion. I mean, diversity of opinion is a good thing, right? People having every soccer culture in the world, and we'll talk about this some more later when we talk about Le Jet. Every soccer culture in the world has a strong debate about their national team players. Every strong soccer culture. So this is normal. And I would argue it's a good thing, right? When people have different opinions and can debate even fiercely who should and who shouldn't be on the national team. So if other people have different opinions, that's okay. Let's debate it, All right. Jackie D. Schalke just loaned out Harit. They could do the same with Hoppy. Yeah, I think they're more looking for money, though, So I think it's more likely, or maybe they would loan him out with a view to, a view to purchase. So like a loan with a buy option, sort of the way that McKennie, they did with McKennie, where they loaned him to Juventus, and then when he reached a certain threshold, there was an automatic purchase, right? Hey, Joshua, how are you? Here we have S27. Pepi should start versus El Salvador based on form. Ooh, not sure about that, S27. Good player for sure. I wouldn't start him yet in a World Cup qualifier. Probably needs to get some experience with the team, maybe get some sub minutes. It should be Sargent or Pifok up top against El Salvador. Okay. Goalkeeper videos. Do you think Bofa could be called in for Weah? That would surprise me a little bit just because he hasn't been on Greg's radar at all, either in this summer, But then maybe it shouldn't surprise me. Greg Berhalter has the capacity to surprise. Bofa, for me, is a Jonathan Lewis level player where he's just not a high-quality winger who's going to be a threat. So I wouldn't love having him called up. No. All right. With Pepi's age, do you see him in Europe soon? Yes, I could see it if he continues to develop. The thing about young players, guys, and we have to understand this, Pepi is still very raw, and he still has a lot to learn and a lot that he can improve. How he handles that, the ups and downs of being a young player, being, really heavily marked out of games. When you start becoming a real threat, teams work extra hard to try to shut you down, and then you have to adapt and learn from that, and you have to change the way you play, or you have to learn other ways to get in behind, other ways to score goals. If he continues to adapt like that, if he continues to improve, and when he hits those walls, which all young players will hit at some point, if he can climb above them instead of let them be a ceiling, so he has to keep breaking through those ceilings, then yeah, there's no reason why he couldn't be, a European striker. Think about this. How many 18-year-olds in MLS are scoring at the rate that he is? 0. Right? There are 0 18-year-olds being as productive in Major League Soccer as Ricardo Pepi. So that should tell us a lot. I'm going to watch Pepi. He's on at 5 p.m. Pacific today. Dallas is playing Austin. I'm going to watch that game just to continue to keep track of him. And maybe I'll talk later about some of his strengths and weaknesses in another video. Okay. All right. Where are we? Antuna is a baller. I don't know if I agree with you. Good player. I think he's hit a bit of a wall, or a ceiling rather. Hey, Ken, how are you doing? Nabuto says, hey, Lanks, you hear about the new dual nationals playing in the Dortmund Academy. He's half American and half Sugandese. Is that Ugandan, Nabuto? Not sure. I have not heard about him. Tell me about him, though. Isaiah says, are there any other good CONCACAF YouTube channels? Yeah. In fact, I am going to have 4 different guys on, or 3 different guys on. For next week's video, we're going to preview CONCACAF qualifying, and we're going to have representatives from Mexico, Jamaica, and Canada all there. So hopefully that will provide you some insight. But off the top of my head, I can say, okay, I just got the joke. All right, Nabuto, got it. Isaiah Cap, yes, there are some, and we'll see them next week. Okay. You guys are hilarious. All right, dude, you got me. Well done. Well done. I'll give you that. Kevin Reaney, don't forget to watch Frank Christian Velasquez says you missed Franklin's super chat. I'm sorry. Let me go back here. Franklin Torres. My apologies, bro. As a Galaxy fan, I can agree Le Jet should not be in the U.S. squad, but then he is the only one to go 3-0 versus Mexico this summer. I think you mean 2-0 versus Mexico. Or are you talking about the All-Star game? Yeah, look, we're going to talk later about Le Jet, and surprise, surprise, guys, I will even talk about some of the things that I think he is good at. But Franklin, yes, I can agree with you that he should not be in the U.S. squad. Or at the very least, he should not be getting as many minutes as he is getting. I think a lot of people can agree with that. All right. Christian Velasquez. 11 Yanks. What's your thoughts on Max Bredo's comments about you? So for those of you who don't know, Max Bredos made a video this week. And he didn't address me or anybody in person, but he did say these YouTubers. I'm guessing I'm probably one of those YouTubers, seeing as I am one of them who, has issues with Le Jet. And he was very emotional and, was saying that we don't know what we're talking about. And Le Jet is one of the most important players on this team. Now, like I said earlier, diversity of opinion in soccer circles is always a good thing, right? Every country in the world that has a strong soccer culture has debate and, debate and just differing opinions about who should be on the national team. The issue with that video, or at least with his comments in that video, was that his reasoning was that we don't like Le Jet is because we hate MLS, which basically tells me he doesn't watch our channels at all, because anybody who's watched our channels for any length of time knows that we have advocated numerous times for multiple MLS players to be on the national team. So straw man argument. I'm happy to hear other people's arguments why he should be on the national team, but come at me with, real reasons, not just, oh, you hate MLS and that's why you think that. That's just ad hominem attacks and it's not good for debate. All right. I was at World Cup 2002 and 2006, and I love the passion we're seeing now. But there's a huge difference between making a World Cup qualifier and the actual World Cup roster. Yes, Al, I agree with you very much on that. The World Cup is a different level than CONCACAF qualifying, and they're different environments. And so, yeah, players who may be involved with World Cup qualifying probably shouldn't be involved with probably shouldn't be involved with the World Cup, certain players, right? And over time, we'll see who that is. And it also depends who emerges between now and then, right? There are guys who, between now and next December, they probably shouldn't be involved anymore. And there will be better players who continue to grow and improve and come through. So, yes, guys, don't forget to smash the like button. So that other people can find us. Filippo always gets on my case. He says, you never tell people to hit the like button, man. You have to hit the like button. All right. So, David Milan, you're always on here. How's it going? Oh, you're talking to Greg. Greg Berhalter says, agree. Always back up what you say. All right. Lads of America, hashtag Team Pete. All right. Burnman, we are going to bring up some stats today, okay? Sacedo cannot be called up. I'm not sure about that. Robbie Platts, what's up, Pete? 11 Yanks, thoughts on the red list countries affecting countries, especially Jamaica and their players. Yeah, it's a tough one because here's the problem. The UK has almost more cases, or as many cases as many of the countries that they are saying that they have red listed. So it feels a little hypocritical to me for them to say, oh, you cannot travel there. Now, if they had few or no cases and these other countries had massive amounts of cases, I could maybe understand that. But the difference is if you have the same amount of cases, it just feels a little disingenuous to say, oh, that's a red zone country, you can't travel there. What about the US, right? The US has massive, massive cases as well, but we're not on a red zone. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem very, it seems a little disingenuous to me, okay? All right. I don't think Jamaica has dropped a roster yet. Yes, Kyle, from what I've heard, they are still negotiating with the Premier League because a lot of their guys play in England. And so they're still trying to figure out who they're going to be able to get and not. And that is going to hamper their preparation. You can't have that much confusion and lack of clarity about your roster. So it's going to hurt Jamaica, and it sucks because it's not their fault, right? They didn't do anything to deserve that. I hope they can get a roster out soon, and I hope they can, be a cohesive. Remember, they're playing Mexico in this window, right? We want them, hopefully, to try to take points off of Mexico. So I'm rooting for Jamaica. I hope they can get their players, especially Mikel Antonio, and the other English guys who play for Brentford, I believe. All right. Lots of good questions in here today. Let's talk a little bit about Tyler Adams, okay? And I bring this up because it's a very good point. Michael Baker on Patreon messaged me and asked, when we play in a back three, what should Tyler Adams' role be? So let me grab the board. All right, so there are many ways that you can play in a back three. I hope you guys can see this, right? So if this is our defense of a back three, all right, let's say we're playing in a 3-5-2, okay? Higher up for you guys. Here we go. So let's say you're playing in a 3-5-2, right? There's two ways that you can use Tyler Adams. Either you can use Tyler Adams as the third central defender, sort of the way that we saw James Sands play in the Gold Cup, right? We saw James Sands play as a third central defender and step into midfield in several phases of the game. He would step into a midfield when we were countered on. So when we lost possession, he would step into midfield and try to break up those counters. Or he would step in midfield to play as a guy who can dictate the game. So that means in possession. Now, if we're going to play with three at the back with Tyler Adams in this role, I would probably largely expect to play that way at home to a team that is going to sit back and give us a lot of space, right? And going to play in a very low defensive block. So here you go. That then allows Tyler Adams to, step into midfield, and then you just have the back two, and he can still protect the back line, but he's further forward to distribute when we have possession, and also to stifle counterattacks when we, when we give up the ball, right? And to press, which leads me to the other way that we can use Tyler Adams. We don't have to use Tyler Adams as one of those three, right? We can have three actual defenders, say Mark McKenzie, John Brooks, and Miles Robinson, for example, right? And then we have Tyler Adams still playing as the six in front of them. But what this does is it allows Tyler Adams to be more free in his role because he can now step higher up the field and be more involved in the high press or the gegenpressing, the counter pressing, right? And not be as worried about having to protect the back line because he knows he's got three guys, behind him. I can see this against a better team. If we're going to play a back three, say against Mexico, I can see having Tyler Adams plus a back three. All right. So he can, and that's something, by the way, Tyler's really good at is counter pressing, right? We see that at Leipzig where he plays, getting up there with Weston McKennie and Reina and what other midfielders we have and trying to squeeze the other opponent as they build through midfield. The other thing to think about with the back three, guys, is that it allows our fullbacks more freedom to attack and they have less defensive responsibilities today, right? So that's the back three is not just good for Tyler Adams. It's good for our fullbacks who can play more as wingbacks, which suits their skill sets, right? We don't have a lot of wingbacks who, can defend really well 1v1. Some of them are a little shaky, which is another reason why I think we should do everything we can to get Julian Araujo, because I think that Julian Araujo is a guy who can defend well 1v1. And we don't have a lot of that in our fullback pool. So let's hope we get him. From what I'm hearing, guys, Julian Araujo is going to make his decision in the October roster, right? He's got competition for sure with our right backs. Julian Araujo has competition with our right backs, right? Certainly he does. He also has competition with Mexico's right backs, right? They have Chaka Rodriguez and Jorge. I don't remember his last name. Can somebody help me out? The other right back, who I actually think is better than Chaka Rodriguez. Somebody will know it. Jorge something. If anybody knows that what it is, please tell me. Okay. So, Mapled. Hey, Pete, have you heard about a player named Alan Sonora who scored 2 bangers for Independiente? Yes, I've known about Alan Sonora for a long time now, Mapled. I have never actually seen him play a full game. It's very hard to find streams for the Argentine league. So I actually haven't seen him play. I've seen highlights. And like I said earlier, highlights are not a good way to judge a player. But certainly someone to keep an eye on, right? Somebody to look at in the future. Franklin Torres, Jorge Sanchez. Thank you. That was the other right back that, Julian Araujo will have to beat out. They'll have to beat out Jorge Sanchez and Chaka Rodriguez. With us, there's only one real candidate ahead of him right now, and that's Dest. Cannon, Yedlin, Reynolds, maybe Scally are all there, but none of them has exactly cemented their place ahead of Araujo, in my opinion. They all have some strengths and some weaknesses, as Araujo does too, but I don't think it's this massive pool that he can't break into. I think he could. So, yeah. All right. Let's see. Miracle Onyekwelu, 11 Yanks. Your opinion on Cameron Carter-Vickers? Cameron Carter-Vickers has to go somewhere where he can continue to develop, right? I don't think Cameron Carter-Vickers has a ton of quality. I wouldn't be against calling him up for maybe a friendly roster, like if we have a December roster or something. Even then, if he's in Europe, they won't call him up. I just think we have significantly better defenders than Cameron Carter-Vickers. He's not very mobile. He's not that good with his feet. He struggled at a decent level. And I just think we have better options, guys, Of course, you can't rule anybody out because he can still improve. He's still 23, 24, so still young. But right now, I just think we have better options. That's my honest opinion on CCV. All right. How was the Atlanta game yesterday, Iriana? Okay. All right. Scally and Reynolds have higher ceilings than Araujo from KY718. I don't know that. I think it's hard to say. They might. I don't think Scally is as technical as Araujo, to be honest, right now. But with young players, it's so hard to say because sometimes players surprise you. You think this kid has a really high ceiling, but they never make it. Remember, there's so much that goes into taking a player from being a young, promising player to a full-blown on professional. There's so much that goes into that. Coaching, environment, personal attitude and drive of the player himself, injuries, a player's, training from when they were a young age that can affect their development processes as they get older. There's so many things, club that they're at, self-belief and confidence is huge. There's so much, and you can't sometimes just bad luck or coaches not liking them, and thus them getting a bad rap. There's so many things that goes into the development of a player. So with young, promising players, we can try to project upwards and say, this is their ceiling because of these reasons. But oftentimes it's very hard. It's very hard to project. There are so many young guys that we thought were going to be huge and they never did. They never made it. And vice versa, guys that you think, man, he's never going to be a great player. And then they surprise us. So with young players, it's just hard to say, Elkin via Lobos. Pete, if Pepi scores a hat trick today, then you shout me out. Deal, Elkin. Deal. All right, Mr. Chat. Who should start and goal? Oh, it's not for me. Sorry. Thought that was for me. Thoughts on McKennie rumors. Okay. Would you be okay with him going to Spurs? Sure. I'd be fine with it. I'd be at this point, I'd be fine with that. I'd also be fine with him staying in Italy. Okay. As much as people disagree with me, maybe, I think that, having to push his way into Allegri's plans and convince Allegri that he has a lot to offer is not easy, right? But I think it will serve him well, right? Because when you are forced to improve, forced to convince a coach that you belong. I feel like I've talked about this many times. It's good for you as a player and as a human being. That's what playing at the top level means. You can never get too comfortable in your position unless you're, Messi or Ronaldo or something. But you can't, because if you do, other people will take your place. Coaches will bench you. And now you got to work harder to convince them. Clint Dempsey did this for years for Fulham, right? New coach would come in, didn't rate Clint Dempsey, would bench him or send him to the reserves even sometimes. What did Dempsey have to do? Claw and fight and scrap his way back into those coaches' plans by showing them that he could play a role through hard work and through not giving up and through not, pouting and throwing a fit. And, he just convinced them that he was an option and eventually almost always worked his way back into their plans. So I think that is a good example for other young Americans to follow. If you're playing at Juventus and the new coach doesn't really rate you, make him rate you. Coaches' minds can be changed through your performance in training and on game day. So change his mind, right? All right. Greg Berhalter. Thoughts on Jesse Marsch's performance so far? Well, from a results, first of all, it's early, right? We're 3 games into the Bundesliga. Now, it hasn't gone well, right? In terms of the first game, they were just awful, right? Lost, I think 1-0 or 2-0. Lost again today, 1-0, and then, was sandwiched by a 4-0 win. So Jesse Marsch, when he took this job, obviously we're all excited. It's awesome to see an American coaching in the Champions League for a top German team. I've always loved Jesse Marsch's style of play, and from all accounts, he seems to be a very good man manager. The question I've always had about Jesse is, can he adapt, right? When what you're doing on the field is not working, can you change and adapt? And I haven't always seen him do that. It feels sometimes to me like he has his style of play and he's going to stubbornly stick to it. And a lot of times it works. But when it doesn't work, the sign of a good coach is they can adapt and they can change and they can tweak, and that's going to be crucial for him to be successful at Leipzig, because the style of play isn't always going to work, right? And so can you change tactically? Can you adapt to what the opponent is doing? Can you adapt to score lines and game states? And that's the question. It's still early, right? But he's not going to have a very long leash. If they start, if they lose to Bayern, then this weekend, now that's 3 losses out of 4, okay? So then he's not, if he loses that, his leash is going to be short, right? And, Leipzig considers himself a top 2, top 3 team in the Bundesliga. If you drop out of those top 3 for significant length of time and you seem to be in a down spiral, he won't last. He won't last there. And I think, especially because he's an American, he'll get even shorter leash. Maybe not from his bosses. His bosses may rate him, but the fans will turn on him, and that puts pressure on the bosses too, right? So I'm rooting for Jesse. I hope they do well, and I think they can, and I hope they will. But only time will tell how he manages this team. And playing well, someone said to me today, yeah, they lost, but they played well. Great. But playing well is not enough. You have to win. That's the thing about being at a higher level, being like, oh, we played well, but we lost 6 out of 10 games. That's not going to be that, that's excusable for 1 or 2 games. But beyond that, that's not a good excuse. You can and will still get fired if you're not getting the results. I mean, it's a results-based business, right? So let's see. I'm rooting for Jesse. I hope he does well. It would be huge to have him stay there for at least a full season. And let's just kind of see how he goes. All right. Jordan Alford. CR7 is home. Also, do you think Sargent will get good playing time? I think it's going to be really hard for him to dislodge Pukki at Norwich. I don't think it's going to be that hard, to be honest. I've watched all the games. I don't think Pukki is significantly levels above Sargent. They trust Pukki, understandably. He's been with them for a long time. He played in the last Premier League campaign that they were, and scored 11 goals. But I don't think he's just miles and miles ahead of Josh Sargent. So I think it's a realistic goal for Josh to dislodge Pukki in that position, right? I think it's tough. I think he's going to have to work really hard and then show on his performances on the field that he deserves it. But I don't think it's unrealistic, and I don't think it's really hard. I think it's very doable. So it's up to Josh now, right? in the minutes that he gets, he has to perform. And by the way, he's done, I mean, he has 2 goals and assists. Yes, it was against a championship team. But when he's come on for Norwich, he hasn't looked out of place or awful. You know, he's created chances. He's been good with his hold-up play. You know, I'm not too worried about Sargent at Norwich. I think this is going to be, again, it's the same thing as Juve. He's got to convince them that he should start. So that's going to be good for his, you know, for him to improve and to work hard and to take what the coach is saying. And, you know, what does the coach want from his players, you know, or from his striker rather, right? He's going to have to take that on board, incorporate it into his game, and then ball out. We'll see how he does. I'm rooting for the guy, right? All right. Okay. Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate that. Guys, do not forget to hit the like button if you are new here or if you haven't already done so. Let's see if we can get this to 500 likes before the end of the chat. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Sebastian Le Jet. Like I said earlier, guys, you know, the debate this week has been fierce on Sebastian Le Jet. Lots of different opinions out there. Okay. And debate on who should be on your national team is good, in my opinion, okay? Because that debate happens everywhere in the world where there's a soccer culture. Who should play for the national team? Not just the national team, clubs, right? Who should start? Who's good for your club? Who do you need to sell? Who do you need to buy? That's a normal part of soccer culture. The problem is when that debate becomes disingenuous or becomes personal attacks, then that's obviously not a good thing. But before we get into the whole discussion about Sebastian Le Jet, I just want to play you guys this one video, okay? Sebastian Le Jet does 2 things very well. He's a connector of passes. He's ball safe. You know, he can keep possession of the ball. He isn't always penetrative with the ball at his feet, but he connects passes well. And the other thing he does really well is he finishes chances. You give Le Jet a chance, he will score. He almost scored late in the game from outside the ball. A nice late, makes those late runs really well, and then he finishes them. Okay? I have no problem with Le Jet continuing to be on the national team. Okay, so the reason why I played you guys that clip, and just to clarify, that was after the Northern Ireland friendly back in March, okay? Le Jet, you guys are confusing me. Le Jet had scored against, I think it was El Salvador back in December in a friendly, albeit a very poor El Salvador team. He had scored against, I think it was Trinidad and Tobago in January, and then he had just come off scoring 2 goals against Jamaica in a friendly. And at the time, I was giving Le Jet the benefit of the doubt that that goal scoring would continue this summer, right? That ability to score goals was even though I had concerns about his ability to be incisive with the ball as an attacking midfielder, the fact that he could score goals, I thought to myself, okay, that's going to translate into this summer, and that is a good reason to have him on the roster, even though he has other deficiencies. Now, that did not happen, right, this summer. Played 7 games over the course of 2 tournaments, 0 goals, okay? The issue that but the reason I showed you guys that video is because one of the quote-unquote accusations that has been leveled at me this week is that I have a bias against Sebastian Le Jet. I have no bias, okay? I defended him when he was scoring goals and thought that was enough to have him be on the roster and even, you know, getting some minutes, right? I thought that was a good thing. I am not biased. My opinion about players is based on 2 things, okay? 1, their performance. 2, the alternative options available. So I have 0 bias against Sebastian Le Jet. But his performances, especially over the summer, have, you know, changed my opinion that he should be on the roster. I just don't think he offers enough, and we'll get more into that. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the other accusation, like I said, that Max, for example, was leveling, is that, you know, you hate MLS. If you watch my channel, guys, that's just a ridiculous claim. Anybody who watches my channel knows that I have advocated many, many times for multiple players, right, to be on multiple MLS players to be on the national team. So I'm just dismissing that one out of hand because it has no basis in truth. Now, what we're going to do, though, is we are going to look at some of Sebastian Le Jet stats and what he does well and what he doesn't, right? And this is not my opinion. These are stats, okay? Now, let me see if I can pull this up here. I wanted to share a screen with you guys. All right. Oh, no, that's not the one. Oof. It's not letting me share this screen. Let me try one more time. Screen sharing was canceled. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 sec. I'm trying to share some stats from FB Ref because, oh, here we go. All right. Can you guys, it's a little small. I don't love that. But basically what we wanted to look at. Now, when we look at these stats, these are not, to be clear, these are not his stats for the national team. Okay. Those are, I looked everywhere to find those stats. It's very hard to find his national team stats at this level because unless you like go to Y Scout or one of these. So I have here his stats for the LA Galaxy, which in my opinion is fairly representative of how he plays, okay, for the national team. Now let's just look at this. Now I want to start at sort of playing devil's advocate with passes attempted. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see this right now. These are passes attempted per 90. Okay, and this is for the LA Galaxy over the last year. Now, these stats are comparing his stats with other attacking midfielders and wingers in MLS. Okay, so passes attempted per 90, as you can see here, 48. The average in MLS is 40, and the high is 80. Can you guys see this? It's a little tough. I know it's a little small, and I can't really zoom in, so I apologize. But look. 80, you know, his attempted passes are slightly above average in MLS, okay? But, and this is really the argument for Le Jet that a lot of people make, and it's a fair one, is his pass completion rate. It's the exact same thing I said in his video. I said he was a connector, a guy who is good at connecting passes, right? 83 per 90, 83.5. The average is 76.6, and the high is 88.7, okay? So above average, not significantly above average, not outstanding, but certainly above average. I will give him that. And, you know, for people say he's good at keeping the ball. That is an argument that they make for Le Jet's inclusion on the team. All right. And really, guys, that is probably the only legitimate argument you can make for his inclusion outside of other intangibles like leadership and experience, which I will address later. Okay. But that's what, you know, people say about him. And why are those, you know, completion rates so high? Remember, this is an MLS, but he does have a high pass completion rate. Why is that so high? Because oftentimes he makes safe passes. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like I have said before, guys, his job as an attacking midfielder is not keeping possession. There are moments, certainly, where he should, but his job is to create, to attack, to give, you know, to create goal-scoring opportunities for himself and for his teammates. Now, let's look a little bit at some of those stats. Okay, first we have goals per 90 compared to other attacking midfielders in MLS. He is slightly above average here, right? With the high being 0.69, the average being 0.20. Sebastian Lletget is at 0.23. Okay, so slightly above average there. I would say about average if you look at the actual numbers. Let's look at assists per 90 in MLS, okay? Above average, but not significantly, right? Average is 0.17. He's at 0.27. The high is 0.61. So not outstanding, but slightly above average, okay, for goals and assists. Like, let's look at expected goals per 90 in MLS, guys. And remember, MLS is not known for its high-quality defending, okay? Expected goals. He is below average in expected goals for attacking midfielders and wingers in MLS. Below average, guys. Shots total in MLS. Below average. Expected assists. Again, below average. Non-penalty goals plus expected assists. Below average. Shot creating actions. Significantly below average. 2.58 as opposed to 3.17. Okay? And what is the thing that I have always said about Sebastian Lletget is that he struggles to be penetrative and incisive with his passing, right? So what that means, let me just try and demonstrate that to you guys. Let's say this is Lletget and Lletget has the ball, okay? Let's say this is Lletget here. He's got the ball. If this is your back line of defenders, okay, and his pass goes sideways here, or slightly forward, that is not a penetrative or an incisive pass. It's not a bad pass necessarily. It's just a safe pass, right? Now, what an attacking midfielder should do, let's say this is Le Jet, is frequently or at least consistently make passes that break through lines, through balls, that take players out of the game, that unbalanced defensive. That's what a good attacking midfielder does. And we haven't seen that enough from Le Jet, and the stats back that up. Now, I understand, yes, these stats are for LA Galaxy, but what these stats are telling me as far as his ability to create chances is that he is at best average, or in some cases, even below average. Let's look at his progressive passes. And Facebook Ref defines progressive passes as completed passes that move the ball towards the opponent's goal at least 10 yards from its furthest point in the last 6 passes. A little confusing, but basically passing the ball forward. And by the way, somebody tried to say I said he never passes the ball forward. That is ridiculous. I never said that, right? Every player on the field passes the ball forward at some time. What I said was that his passes, are not incisive or penetrating enough. They are just safe passes, which is probably what contributes to the high passing percentage, right? Safe passing. And we'll talk a little bit about the value of safe passing later, but let's continue with this. Progressive passes. Again, here he is slightly above average. If the high is 11.4 and he's below average. 3.57 is the average. He's 3.32. So again, below average in progressive passes. What about progressive carries? So, midfielders like Gio Reyna or Brendan Aronson dribbling into midfield, right? Dribbling who can take players on 1v1. Sebastian Lletget, quite significantly below average, right? What about completed dribbles? Significantly below average again, right? Those are his attacking statistics. And that pretty much lines up with everything I've ever said about Le Jet, is that, he's not incisive or penetrative or creative or makes enough line breaking passes enough. And those stats pretty much agree with everything I've ever said about him. Now let's look at his defensive stats, right? Some people say, what's his name? Gio Reyna can't play in midfield because he's defensively poor. Let's look at Le Jet's defensive stats, all right? Pressures in MLS, significantly below average. Tackles, not significantly, but below average. And this is in MLS, guys. What about interceptions? Again, below average, right? Blocks, average, okay? If the average is 1.28, 129. The only defensive statistics where he is above average are in his clearances, so good job to him, and aerials 1, okay? Not significantly in either of those, but certainly above average. So, guys, these are the statistics from Le Jet in MLS. Now, I realize those are not his national team statistics. I wish I had his national team statistics, and I may do that at some point if people want to continue to debate this point. But the picture here that's being painted from his stats in MLS are that he is an average, at best above average, often below average MLS midfielder, which doesn't justify the amount of minutes that he's gotten for the national team, right? So the only metric where he does seem to be consistently above average is his pass completion rate, right? And let's talk a little bit about that, because that is a fair argument that people can make for, Le Jet. He's good at keeping the ball. Now, here's my question about that. Is he good at keeping the ball because he largely makes safe passes, right? If you're making passes sideways and backwards or even forwards, but they're not risky passes with high reward, then yeah, you're going to have a high pass completion rate. Now, there is value in making safe passes. Let's talk about what that is, right? There are several things. One, sometimes you need to rest with the ball. Usually when a game is chaotic, right, you need to be able to rest with the ball. And sometimes that means keeping the ball and settling the tempo down a little bit, okay? Another reason to make safe passes is to reorganize your attack. Now, let's say, and this is an argument for Le Jet, we turn forward and we're trying to play the ball forward, but none of our attackers are in a good position to get into back lines or to receive the ball. Then it makes perfect sense to the sideways, to the side or backwards, and to try to recycle possession, give the attackers time to move around, and then maybe look at options. The problem, my counter argument to that though, is that Sebastian Le Jet often plays the ball backwards and to the sides or makes the safe pass when there is a good option going forward available, when there is somebody he can pass to in behind. So yes, there is value to that. Another reason to make safe passes and to be good at just keeping possession, even if that means not being incisive, is when you're trying to protect a lead, right? If you have, a 3-0 lead and there's 10 minutes to go, it makes sense to be able to keep possession of the ball. So those are arguments that people can and do make for Le Jet. And I'm fine hearing those arguments, guys. If your argument is, I think he does this well and the stats seem to show that, then you would have to argue, does he do that well enough compared to his competition, for that spot to justify his position? And we can discuss that. That's fine. I'm more than happy to discuss all of that. But if your argument are, you're anti-MLS or you're anti-Le Jet or you're pandering to an audience, I can't take you seriously, okay? Because you're not debating the actual merit of the issues. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on Le Jet. Now listen, guys, my opinion on Le Jet and him being on the national team is fluid. If he all of a sudden starts to consistently show that he can be incisive, penetrative, creative, even if he just starts scoring goals. Remember, he has 1 goal in 10 competitive games. If you take out the friendly games, 1 goal in 10 competitive games, and that was 4.5 years ago. Even if he starts, scoring goals more regularly or more consistently, or starts making incisive passes consistently over a period of time, then I will change my position on Sebastian Le Jet. All I want is a strong national team. And to be fair to the people who disagree with me, I think that's all they want too. I think all of us in Twitter world or YouTube world or podcast world or whatever you want to call it, want the strongest possible national team, right? And so we just have different ways of accomplishing that. We have different opinions of what that means. And this is my opinion on Le Jet. I have zero bias against Le Jet. I am open to changing my mind about him if he starts doing all of these things well. But all the data we have for the last God knows how long tells us that's not going to happen, right? Maybe he'll start scoring goals regularly because we have seen him do that in friendlies. Maybe that will still translate into World Cup qualifiers. I certainly hope it does because we do need more goals from midfield. We need more creativity from midfield, right? We need more incisive passes from midfield. One of our biggest, issues this entire summer in both Gold Cup and in Nations League was that we struggled to create an open play, particularly from midfield. We had a lot of set pieces and a lot of counterattacks is still open play though. So I'll give him that. But we haven't been good when it comes to being incisive in possession. And I think that's directly related to some of the personnel that we've put out there. So when Sebastian Le Jet plays, which he probably will in these 3 games, he puts on that USMNT jersey and he crosses the white line, I'm rooting for him. He is a USMNT guy. And I am open to changing my mind about him if consistently over time he demonstrates that he can improve dramatically on the things we have, on his deficiencies that I have pointed out. But for me, right now, he does not deserve a spot and certainly doesn't deserve the amount of minutes he's been getting. He started almost every game for Greg Berhalter this summer, almost every competitive game. Out of the 8 games available, I think he started 6 and came on as a substitute in 1. So I don't think he's worth that many minutes. The other problem, guys, is that it's not just about what he does. It's about who else you have available, right? We have 6 guys, in my opinion, that can play that role as an attacking midfielder better than him, right? Gio Reyna, Christian Pulisic, Brendan Aronson, Luca De La Torre, Julian Green, and hang on, those 3, Julian Green, Luca De La Torre, Yunus Musa, and Weston McKennie. 7, okay? Obviously, I know that Reyna, Greg likes to play Reyna as a winger and Pulisic as a winger. I have no problem with, Reyna, I think, should play centrally. But that's the other thing when we talk about Le Jet, is not just about what he does or doesn't do. It's can others do it better? And I think the answer, even just from the eye test, is a resounding yes. Now, obviously, I understand Musa is injured right now. And I understand the argument that Luca de la Torre shouldn't have been called up after he turned down his Gold Cup call-up. I understand that too. But all that being said, I think we have better options, even if you just have Gio Reyna partnered with Weston McKennie or Brendan Aronson or Julian Green, who still hasn't gotten a look, despite the fact that he's now doing what has been doing well for a long time for Greuther Fürth. So look, like I said, guys, this is my opinion about Sebastian Lletget. I have no bias against the guy. If he performs well consistently over a period of time, I will change my opinion on him. But as of right now, this is what I have to go on. And I'm not going to change my opinion just because some people are mad at me or, disagree with me. I'm always open to debate it. If you have, actual data to talk about and you can bring me, we can debate the merits. But if you're going to make personal attacks, then we just can't debate it. Okay. So that is enough on Sebastian Lletget. That is my official position on Sebastian Lletget and will not change unless we see consistency from Sebastian Lletget in doing all of these things that I've talked about. I hope that was helpful to you guys because, there's been a lot this week. I'm not going to lie, people attacking me or attack for our opinion on Lletget. And I think that the stats support my opinion on Lletget. So that's not going to change. All right, let's continue. Let's see. Manuel Acosta. Just don't claim to not have a bias when you obviously do. Manuel, did you see the video at the beginning where I talked about advocating for Lletget's inclusion, or did you just ignore that? Maybe you have a bias, buddy. All right, let's leave Lletget, aside for now and talk about other things. Max Deckman, we love you, Pete. Thank you, Max. I love you too, man. And that is an adorable koala. Okay, here's an interesting one. Do you think Reyna will play CM? Good question. Man, I don't know. I actually was more... Okay, so first of all, I think one of the reporters asked Greg Berhalter in the press conference, will he play central mid? Will him and Aronson play central midfield? And Greg Berhalter admitted it was a possibility, right? So yes, I think it's a possible. Now, I have a concern, though, with Tim Weah now being injured because one of the reasons that you could move a guy like Gio Reyna inside is that Tim Weah could play, right wing. Now with Weah gone, I don't know if that's going to happen. I know you could still play De La Fuente there and Aronson there, but with Pulisic, let's just say this. I don't think we'll see Reyna in the middle in the first game. I think we'll see, because I don't think Pulisic will play the first game either. So I think you'll see probably Reyna on the right and then either Aronson or De La Fuente on the left. I think very likely we'll see Sebastian Lletget in midfield. In the other games, I'm not sure. I think we will see it at some point, but I don't think it will be a starting position. Like, I don't think Reyna will start in the middle yet. I think he might get some minutes in the middle, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Let's see. Thoughts on Hoppy possibly being called up. We talked about this a little earlier, Andrew. He may get called up, and if he does, I, wouldn't have a problem with it. But if they don't call him up, I'll understand why, because he's not fully fit. He just got back into training, just got some sub minutes for Schalke, 16 minutes. There may also be some transfer things going on with him last few days before the transfer window closes. So I understand why Greg left him off the roster. If he calls him up now to replace Weah, I won't have a problem with it. But like I said, I don't have a problem with leaving him off. I think very likely we'll see Joaquini or maybe one of the two midfielders, Julian Green, Luca de la Torre, one of those kind of guys. That would be my guess. All right. Burnman, Hoppy is the number one guy who needs a call-up to replace the Weah loss. Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with that, Burnman. I would totally be fine with it. We'll see how his fitness is, though, and if there is an impact on that or not. Guys, I realize I have missed a lot of super chats here, and I apologize. Lletget's best skill is staring sexily into a camera. He is definitely a very sexy man. Certainly is. I will give him that. Nice shirt, Pete. I have the same one. Oh, Adam Stam. The strings are way too long. Am I right? Yeah, they are a little long. This is like a $7 shirt from Ross. So it's super comfortable, though. It's perfect for like a summer shirt. All right, guys, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't miss any of the super chats. When I was talking about Le Jet, I didn't want to answer any super chats because I was making a case, and I would interrupt my train of thought. Longmorn 16, thoughts on Eric Palmer Brown moving to Troyes? Yes, I saw that. If he ends up going there, I don't know if it's finalized. I think it's just a rumor at this point. But yeah, I think he needs to test himself at a higher level, right? He was in Austria, and I don't know if that translates to France, if he can play at that higher level, but I like to see him pushing himself and challenging himself and going there. And he's 24. He's at an age where he needs to, especially if he wants to be on the national team, he's going to have to be playing at a higher level than Austria, in my opinion. Now, I know that seems hypocritical because Brendan Aronson is playing in Austria and doing quite well. So that actually is a fair point. And the difference, though, is I think we have better options in center back. So Eric Palmer Brown might be competing with, Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards, John Anthony Brooks, Miles Robinson, Walker Zimmerman, Matt Miazga. You know what I mean? So there's more competition. And so for him to get noticed and to stand out, he's going to have to go play at a higher level. Personally, and I could be wrong about this, I don't think he has a very high ceiling. But I could be wrong. He's still young enough that he can improve. And oftentimes, defenders improve later than attackers, right? Because a lot of defending is about experience and knowledge and just repetition, whereas attacking is not as much that way. Okay. Manuel Acosta, Green deserves a call-up, but adding a midfielder would keep Gio out wide, in my opinion. Yes, Manuel, I agree with you on that. Why hasn't Aronson made a better move to a better league? A move to a better league. Greg Berhalter, how are you, sir? I think because he's only been there for 6 months. You know what I mean? It's very rare that a player goes somewhere for 6 months and then moves. I could see him possibly moving in January. I think what we want to see is how does he perform in Champions League, right? Because we know he can perform well in the Austrian league, and we saw some flashes of good things in the Europa League, but let's face it, it's still a pretty low level compared to where he could be, I think. So my guess is if he performs well for 6 months, and especially if he performs well in the Champions League, there's a possibility that Leipzig takes him in January. But I could be totally off on that. Let's see. All right. Aronson has a lot of confidence. Yes, he does. All right. I hope I haven't missed any other super chats, guys. And I hope today, Eric Palmer Brown I got. Yeah, I think I got hang on. Pete, the MLS hater, is happy to see Bello over Vines. It's exactly that, Frank. It's Miles Robinson, I've advocated for his inclusion. Matt Turner, James Sands, there's just so many that I've advocated for. That is just silly to try and suggest that I have a hate MLS or an MLS bias. That's just somebody who can't debate a point, so has to make a personal attack. Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to go watch Pepi now. This was awesome. Thanks for coming to hang. I hope what we talked about was useful to you guys, was helpful. And if you disagree with me on anything, that is totally fine, guys. Disagreement and debate is all part of having a thriving ecosystem of a soccer culture. And so disagree all you want, and let's debate points on their merit. I am more than happy to do that. I apologize for the super chats I missed. I know that a lot of them came when I was talking about Le Jet. If I missed any, guys, please put them in the chat now, actually, and I'll answer them now, okay? Let's see. Will Clark be considered since Weah is out? Yes, but Clark hasn't been performing so well since he got back from his appendix surgery, which is understandable, right? Sometimes it can take a while to get back to – the guy had surgery. Like, it takes a while to get back to full form and fitness. I don't think he will be called up based on recent performances, but if he was called up, again, I would be fine with it. I would be fine with most people that are in the mix to be called up, honestly. I would, because there are a lot of good ones out there. Let's see. De La Fuente will get a goal or assist against El Salvador. That would be awesome, Ramirez. That would be awesome. Any other questions from the super chat that I missed, guys? Please. Okay, Frank Alvarez said, how will the roster work? Was my super chat. So very quickly, they got 26, 27 players, and 24 hours before each game, they can switch. They name a 23-man roster for that game. So that's how it will work. And then those 23 players will be the ones who make the game day roster. And then for the next game, they can, make 23 different players if they want. It doesn't matter. You can interchange easily. All right. All right, guys. Dallas is apparently on Fox Sports 1. It's also on ESPN Plus if you want. Let's go watch Ricardo Pepi, our new USMNT forward, 18 years old, play. This was awesome, guys. Thanks for coming to hang. Thanks for giving me your thoughts and ideas. I always love this. I will see you guys next week. World Cup qualifying starts. Cannot wait. We'll have a video out on Tuesday where we will preview World Cup qualifying with some other CONCACAF channels. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go. Talk to you guys soon.